Hi guys, welcome back. So it's been another month. It's actually been a little bit over a month, but I finally have an update ready for you. We were allowed out of quarantine for the first time last weekend, so we went on a little road trip. So I've collected some footage I can include here, and I finally finished my book about the Norman Conquest. I read one book during this month about the Norman Conquest, and it was this one, The Norman Conquest by Marc. This book was probably my least favorite book that I've read so far this year. It wasn't that bad, it just was a little dry for me and very focused on military history, which was, to be honest, a little boring. But that being said, this book was a really good overview of, as I said, the end of the Anglo-Saxon period and the Norman Conquest itself. So I think most importantly, to catch us up from where we ended the last video, there were several hundred more years of Anglo-Saxon rule in England, and then there was another Danish invasion, and there was actually a Danish king. So King Knut was king, and then when he died there was a battle for which of his sons would become King of England, and it ended up that it was Edward the Confessor. And while this book talked about Edward the Confessor, I have to admit that I still don't really understand why he was called Edward the Confessor. And I think the coolest part of his story is his mom, Emma of Normandy, who seems like she was a total badass. She was Queen of England twice, married to two different kings, and mother to two other kings. So she was really interesting, really scheming. She reminded me a lot of Cersei from Game of Thrones. I'd love to know more about her. But what we focused on in this book was Edward the Confessor and William the Conqueror. So in his childhood, Edward the Confessor grew up in Normandy because of all this instability in England. And while he was there, he developed really strong connections with the Norman rulers, including the young Duke of Normandy, William. So when Edward became king, he was apparently celibate, very religious, hence the name Edward the Confessor, and he didn't have any heirs, and instead he said that he made William of Normandy his heir. Of course, when he died, it was actually another earl in England, Harold, who claimed the throne, and that led to the conquest of England by the Normans because William wanted to stake his claim to the throne, and so he invaded England, fought a big battle with Harold at the Battle of Hastings in 1066, and then spent the next 20 years asserting control over the English countryside in a variety of pretty horrific ways. So it seemed to me from this book that at least part of what William did would be what we would call a genocide against the English people. So it's really intense, horrible kind of reckoning period for 20 years where the Normans really killed a lot of English people, and it was very much the end of the Anglo-Saxon period and the start of something completely new. So the Normans introduced a new culture, a new language, castles, abbeys. They really transformed the English countryside in many ways and really started to make England what it is today. So that was all in this book. It was interesting. Obviously I knew about 1066 and the Battle of Hastings, but I didn't know all the little details. I didn't know about the harrying of the North. I didn't know about Harold, the King of England. I didn't understand all the political dynamics that were happening around this period, so it was interesting to read about. And when we were finally allowed out of our houses last weekend, we drove down to Pevensey, which is actually where the Normans landed. They didn't land in Hastings. They landed about 5 kilometers over, 5 miles over in Pevensey. So we went to that bay to see where they would have landed. Then we drove through Hastings and up to the town of Battle, which is where the Battle of Hastings actually was. And as part of his guilt for the extreme pain and bloodshed he caused by invading England, William built a lot of abbeys, including one called Battle Abbey, right on the site of the Battle of Hastings. So we visited Battle Abbey, but of course during this COVID period it was closed, so we only got to see the doors. But we did see it. It is where the battle happened, and its altar actually marks where Harold was killed. So maybe someday we'll go back and actually see it. But for now, we've at least seen the outside. So I'll insert some footage here. Okay guys, so like I said, it was just the one book that I read this month, and while it was interesting, it was a little dry, and I'm looking forward to something a little bit more interesting for the rest of May and into June. I'm hoping to read about Henry I and Henry II and the period of the anarchy in English history. So I'll be reporting back to you as soon as possible. Hopefully we'll get a few more trips, maybe things will start to open up and we can even visit some sites. We'll see. Hope you're all keeping well, and thanks for watching. Bye!